Welcome, everybody, to the Healing Place podcast. I am your host, Teri Wellbrock. And today, I haven't done this in a long time. I've had 3 interviews today. So for those who are like, maybe like binging these episodes on YouTube, you're like, why are you wearing the same outfit, looking exactly the same today? It's because I've interviewed all 3 of these wonderful, beautiful humans in a row. So this beautiful human, Kelly Smith, is yoga and meditation teacher, founder of Yoga for You, and host of Mindful and Minutes, which is in the top 0.1%, 500,000 monthly listeners. That is so cool. So welcome, Kelly.
Oh, thank you so much, Terry. And I agree. I think that's so cool too. I think it's amazing. We're chatting just a little bit offline about just how lucky we are to have people to tune into our podcasts and to get to share what we love with people.
Yes, I call this my soul work. I mean,
Oh,
the podcast, I do audiobook narrations and write, and it doesn't even feel like work because this is such a joy. I mean, like sitting with you and just having a beautiful conversation about healing and hope and love and all that goodness. Yeah, it's good for my heart and soul. I say selfishly, it's like the best job in the world. So
it is. It is the best job in the world. What made you want to, not that this is my podcast. I don't
yeah,
even interview people,
that's
but
all
Terry,
right.
what made you want to start this podcast? What was the thing? Because every podcaster has something where they're like, you know what? I'm going to start a podcast. What was your thing?
Yeah, mine's a funny story. So I have horrific trauma history in my early youth. And so I went back to school and obtained my degree in psychology and then went on to do master's work in sociology. And I was working at a mental health facility in Cincinnati where we lived at the time and befriended a wonderful licensed therapist who was in her 20s. And I was in my late 40s, early 50s. We were out to dinner and she said, we totally should start a podcast. And I said, awesome. What's a podcast? Like I'd never even heard, like, what is it? And so we started this show. And about 10 episodes in, she received a job offer at Cincinnati Children's Hospital and she was doing private practice as well. Anyway, her schedule got crazy. And I said, you know what? I really like this. And I think I'm going to take it in a more serious direction. We were being silly, yeah, doing mental health, but angels and aliens, and we were just having crazy conversations. So I did, and I started to reach out to some trauma recovery specialists and those working like you in the healing arena, and started to get some yeses. And then it was like, I got bit by the bug and I fell in love with it and fell in love with these conversations. And so that's how I got into it, by pure accident of what the heck's a podcast.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Thank you for sharing. And also, I think angels and aliens are kind of fun too. So hopefully you still circle back to that sometimes because
Yeah, every
it's
now and
always a
then.
good time. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
good.
for sure. I love the woo-woo stuff, and it's not so woo-woo
Same.
anymore, right? Like, yeah.
Right.
You can see all my angels, my angel behind me. So yeah.
hmm
So now, founder of Yoga for You. I know I've practiced yoga not in any serious kind of way where it became a practice, but I've certainly gone to a lot of different types where friends have invited me and friends have been teaching it. And so can you talk to us about, I guess, what is your mission around meditation and yoga?
So, Yoga for You is a location independent yoga and meditation school. So, I don't have a physical location. And part of that is because my husband, we had to move a lot for his job for different, periods of time. And anyone listening who's had a location dependent business, even if you're doing, private practice or yoga teacher, something where you really have to pull from your community and get clients. It takes a long time to build that community. So I thought, well, if I'm going to be kind of transient for a while, I want to try to build more of this online community. And my mission has always been to make people feel better. Like I just feel like my life's purpose, my hope is that every interaction I have with someone, they leave worst case scenario, like neutral, feeling the same, but I hope they feel even like 1% better. And for me in my life, different ups and downs, yoga and meditation were kind of that, like that life raft that I needed to stay afloat. And so I love being able to just help people feel better, even if it's that little bit with whatever is going on in life, because life is big and busy and hard. It can be beautiful and all these other things. It also can be so tough and even tragic at times. And so I love to help support people no matter where they're at. And I really believe that there isn't this one size fits all approach. So I like to learn about all these different styles of yoga and meditation, pull different techniques out, and then really create these simple and grounded practices that help support people no matter where they're at.
Yeah, I just followed you on Instagram. I followed a link and went and followed. So is this something that folks sign up for, or can they tune into YouTube or Instagram or social media and catch little snippets of what you're talking about?
Yeah, so all of those places, it's not necessarily something that people can sign up for. But under the Yoga for You umbrella, there are different things. So there's my podcast, Mindful in Minutes, and then Meditation Mama, which is also guided meditations, but it's for fertility, prenatal, and postpartum people. So that was my like pandemic baby project when I was having a pandemic pregnancy. I started that podcast. And then, of course, like on social media, Instagram, things like that, I'm sharing. I put my meditations on YouTube as well. And then I do also do things like retreats and meditation teacher trainings, yoga nidra teacher training. So I love teaching people how to teach this stuff because I feel like there's such a need and so many people want to do it. I mean, even people in your field, Teri, like, you know, the benefit of things like meditation, of mindfulness, and you would love to be able to share it with others, but like you just don't know how. I love teaching people how to do that. So that's what I really do. And I have two little kids. So I really focus on kind of the trainings and then the podcast because I'm able to fit those into my life and still be the mom that I want to be.
Yes, beautiful. Well, I know for me, and the thought that I had, shoot, it just popped right out of my head. So there it went. Okay, never mind.
It'll come back. The angels and
It'll
the
come back.
aliens will bring it back to
Yeah,
you.
exactly, exactly. Darn it, it was so good too. And it was about, oh, that's what it was. So you had mentioned, various forms. I'm finishing up a book manuscript on forgiveness, but part of what I'm writing about, including in it, is meditations. And so as I was researching, I said, oh my gosh, like I've had a few guests come on to talk about different forms of meditation, but I didn't realize how much is out there as far as, and I love it that you're incorporating and pulling in so many different forms, because I think people hear meditation and they're like, oh, I have to sit still and just make my mind stop.
Just turn my brain off and do
Yeah,
nothing
right.
for 30 to 60 minutes, which like is it could be that, but it certainly doesn't have to be that. And it usually isn't that. And I think that a lot of people they have heard that meditation is good, right? They'll say, "Oh, I know meditation is good for you." Or like if I were to go to a dinner party and people are like, "What do you do?" I'm like, "I'm a meditation teacher." I usually hear something like, "Oh, I tried meditation once and," or, "Oh, I know meditation is good for you, but I could never do it because," and then, fill in the blank. Usually it's things like, "I'm too busy," or, "Oh, my brain's too scattered," or "I have ADHD. I don't know where to start," or "I can't sit crisscross applesauce," or "I don't have an extra 30 to 60 minutes every day." All of these things are really myths. They're misconceptions about what meditation is and how you can practice it. And I love to debunk those myths because it's so much easier and less complicated than you think because you only need 8 minutes a day. Studies tell us 8 minutes a day is enough for the physical, mental, emotional benefits. When people say that, oh, my brain is too busy or I have ADHD, I also have ADHD. So it's one of the best things you can do when I always joke, I'm like, oh, you're, too ADHD to meditate. That's like saying I'm too dirty to take a shower. But it's one of those things that it's like, it's one of the best things for you. Or, when you're busy or you feel so overwhelmed, like I couldn't possibly fit that in. Like that's when you need it the most. And what I love is I love to take different elements because there's so many different styles out there too. So many people are like, but I don't know where to start. I don't know whether, I should I've heard about Vipassana meditation. Should I be doing that? Or should I do a guided meditation or a loving kindness meditation? And I love to create guided meditations that just pull these little elements from different styles, different lineages, because everyone, just like with movement or what we eat, everyone's body needs something different to feel really supported and nourished. And like our minds, when it comes to meditation, need something a little bit different too. So I love to take these different elements and then put them in guided meditations under a theme. So anxiety relief or insomnia or opening your heart, something like that. But then pull the techniques from different styles that best help to support like that theme that people might be working on through their meditation.
Yeah, again, it's so beautiful. And I'm such a huge fan of meditation, and I wasn't. And maybe you can speak to that a little bit, in that because I had horrific trauma history, I was terrified to be in my body. Like I spent a lot of time dissociating, but I was so afraid of the stillness, because it was scary to be in me, until I learned to be with my breath, and to that I was okay even with the scary that may have been arising, right? So do you work with trauma survivors at all, and address that?
Yes and no. So I have worked individually with trauma survivors. But a lot of what I do, like through my podcasts and things like this, this, Terry, you don't always know who's on the other side of the microphone. So I imagine I'm working with a lot more than I know. And this does come up sometimes with, all sorts of trauma where people, Rumi has this famous quote, quiet the mind and the soul shall speak. But I think it's more like quiet the mind and everything starts yelling at you. Because when we're moving fast, when we're doing all of these things, we're taking so much and just pushing it down, 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 whether it's our feelings, whether it's, facing something that's coming up, whether it's just trying to outrun the burnout, whatever it is, right? Is if we go, 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 we don't have to actually face what's going on. But when you hit the pause button, you slow down even for a few minutes and you just turn inward and check in. It's like everything is like, finally, she's listening, and it goes like flooding to the surface. So I always tell people that are either working with trauma or are worried about being with themselves for what might come up is, one, I hold space for that. And I want everyone to hear that that fear and that worry is so valid, just like yours was, Terry. That experience is so valid. Of sometimes when you first start slowing down, it's almost like the gunk, not to minimize it, but it's sort of like the gunk has to come up and out. But the alternative of just keep stuffing it further and further and further down, that's not great either. And so I often, when I work with people who are working through trauma, is I try to give them tools for their toolbox. And so as they're, because again, it's not a one size fits all approach. Just like trauma isn't one size fits all. It's people could experience a similar trauma and have a very different response to it immediately, days after, years after. And so giving people tools for their toolbox to empower them to use them to support themselves is where I find the sweet spot is. So, for example, if someone's having a hard time returning to their body or being in their body, it's like, okay, what kind of practices can we try that feel good or supportive to the body? Is it more of like a breath meditation? Is it a body scan? That one's, really popular because you're just like reconnecting with your body. Is it doing more of a somatic practice? Maybe you're, moving your hands up and down your arms as you meditate, or kind of, putting your hands on your knees, squishing them a little bit. Is it something like a mantra? Do you need to, inhale, I am safe, exhale, all is well? It's sort of figuring out like what's your personal recipe that you need to feel supportive. And it can be a little trial and error. And I also want to speak to the fact that people imagine meditation is like somehow turning your mind to like this light and you just flip the switch off and it's like off. That's not it at all. Meditation isn't having no thoughts. It's about getting distracted and then coming back, getting distracted and coming back. It's about observing the thoughts as they pop up, but not getting, completely controlled by those thoughts. It's learning how to just non-judgmentally observe the thoughts while they're there. And that in and of itself, that ability of non-judgmental observation is so powerful, whether you've experienced trauma or not, but especially if you're kind of parsing through your own trauma, learning how to zoom out a little bit and non-judgmentally observe just what's happening within you and around you is such a powerful tool.
Yeah. Wow. Brilliant on so many levels. Like just a great explanation. Thank you. And as you discussed, the gunk, all I could think was without bringing it to the surface, I always called it stored negative energy. And so it surfaced with me through panic attacks. And so until I started to allow the gunk to surface and move it out, right? That stored negative energy. That's when I was able to finally start really, really, really appreciating the beauty and the amazing healing of meditation and breath work. So thank you for that. It was great visual. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. And I'm curious, what kind of made you turn the corner on meditation? Was there one particular thing that kind of made you go from, I'm not so sure about this to, it's helping to heal me?
Yeah, it was recommended to me, and I want to say it was by my therapist. I was doing EMDR therapy when I first
Yep.
stepped onto the healing path in 2013. And she was having me do four square breathing and just trying meditation. And I was just really struggling, really struggling. And someone had recommended, and I can't remember who did, if it was maybe a guided meditation, something said to I was starting to practice mindfulness. And so I would remember sitting in the car and I would have panic attacks arise in the car, particularly if I was waiting to turn left and cars were zipping this way and cars were zipping this way. And I felt very trapped, right? Trapped in an open space seems to be my theme. And so I said, okay. So I turned up the radio dial and focused just on the piano in the song, like just on the piano notes and kind of like focusing on. And I turned my head to look out the window, and in this blacktop cement, concretey, area was this beautiful yellow flower and just peeking through the crack. And said to myself in that moment, okay, like this is I need to be mindful. And so I just looked at that flower and I listened to the piano, and it was like it just clicked. And I just sat with my breath and I sat with the notes and I sat with the flower, and then it all dissipated. And then I made the left turn. And that was my defining moment.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that with me.
Yeah, yeah. Well, again, I've talked about it on this show before, and I'm just going to share this real quick. I know I'm yapping. Um, but when my most powerful meditation that I had was I always did guided meditations, and for whatever reason, this was probably about 10 years ago, um, I decided to just meditate in silence, like just be with me, right? I had reached a point of being comfortable enough in my own skin. And uh, all I can define it as is angels. These blue orbs appeared and summoned me to follow them. And so I went on this very dark tunnel. And I remember thinking to myself, am I dead? I was like, I am being drawn down this dark tunnel. But in the distance, I could see a white light, and I was pulled towards it. So we get there, and I was told pause, and it was a smoky veil, and the smoky veil was pulled back for what I can say a millisecond that lasted an eternity. And I was glimpsed upon this pure love and peace. And I said, oh, that's where I've come from, and that's where I long to return. And so for me, that was just like a crazy powerful. So I'm such a fan of meditation because I was given this beautiful gift of that I needed for my own personal, that's what I needed for my spiritual journey. And so I think that for me, that's what meditation is. It's like, not that everyone's going to have that experience, but it's the gift of you, like coming
Mhm.
home to you, I guess.
Yes. Yes. I always say it's like the gift of connecting with your true self. Because I think that's like the secret to really living a happy and fulfilling life is connecting with that true self. It's something, when you look at kids, whether you have kids or not, if you've been around a kid, especially ones like under the age of 5, they are just so authentically them. And they are so connected to their true selves, right? The world hasn't hardened them in any way. And for better or for worse, they are, their truest selves. And there's something that happens as we get older and the world gets harder and, people start giving their input and it starts being a little less okay to be your true self. And we get further and further from that, like our essence that we're born with. And it just, to be able to return to that space in adulthood or young adulthood or any point in your life where you feel like you're disconnected from that true self, to be able to return to that, I think is the most special and important thing that you can do, and really is a secret to living like a happy and fulfilling and authentic life, is reconnecting with that space. And for me, and it sounds like for you as well, meditation is such a great vehicle for that, because it really challenges you to be present, to shut down the senses and to turn inward, to gaze inward and see what's happening underneath the surface, because that's where really the magic lies, is under the surface within you.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. Now, I know your podcast is mindful in minutes. And so can you do you have a favorite mindfulness practice? I know what mine is, but is that what you teach people, is how to be mindful throughout their days, not just in moments of meditation?
No, I mostly do guided meditations over there. And so I write these meditations. I've been doing it for like 8 years. So there's hundreds over there. And I just love writing and recording these practices. And so it's almost all guided meditations. And there's a handful of what I call freeform episodes where I do some more teaching, maybe some deep dives. Like it might be like loving kindness 101, or I just did one on like how to soften your heart, like little simple ways, especially, when you feel like, when you're just having a hard time or you're really anxious, you're in survival mode. Like I've been hearing from so many of my students and stuff that they're just having a hard time right now. How can you still soften your heart in those moments? So there is some teaching, but then it's a lot of just guided practices. So you can just hit play and I'll walk you through the process. But I don't know if I could pick a favorite. Isn't that kind of like picking a favorite kid? Like
Right.
it's you can't really do it because they're all so special and beautiful in their own way. But I guess I have a special soft spot for loving kindness meditation, because that's the one that I learned, really did a deep dive first. It's a long story, but I met these monks on the internet and then they asked me to come live with them for a couple of weeks. So I did. And then I took this vow of silence and I went to the forest in the middle of Missouri. I was living there for a while and just found myself really having no meditation experience, to having taking a vow of silence and like being so disconnected, no phone, you couldn't read books, anything. And like just meditating for like 3 hour sessions multiple times a day. And it was such a transformative experience, kind of a wild experience, and like so bold, something I would do that I did in my early 20s versus something that I would probably never do now in my, early 30s. But it just was, I feel like my first really big meditation experience. And it was so profound that I always have a soft spot for that style in particular.
Yeah. Wow. That is wow. I I can't even imagine taking a vow of silence and just being, but I can only imagine how profound it was. Wow. All right. Very cool.
It's easier
Mine,
than you think. It's easier than you think. Everyone says I could never take a vow of silence. Take it from, an ADHD Gemini who loves to podcast. Okay. If I can take a vow of silence, you can too. And it's easier than you think. The first day or two is uncomfortable. But then you just really settle into just this ease. And like there's none, I'm from the Midwest, so we're all, you know, Minnesota nice or whatever, but there's all these little ways that you communicate with people even without speaking. Like it feels weird if someone's walking and you don't kind of give them the little like, the little wave or like the hi, but when you take the vow of silence, you can't do any of that, like no communication. And honestly, it takes a lot of the pressure off. You're like, I don't have to be like socially acceptable or like polite. I just can be in my own space. And after like 48 hours, feels pretty liberating.
that is just, I didn't even realize you couldn't wave. Like, oh
Yeah,
my
no
God.
communication.
Wow. That's crazy. Very, very cool. Well, I know mine is I do 5 4 3 2 1 mindfulness out in
Okay.
nature.
Mm,
And I love that. Just using my senses, connecting with my senses to nature.
mhm.
So yeah.
I always call that senses cycling. And that's the thing too, when it comes to like meditation and mindfulness, a lot of times similar techniques have like different names just depending on
Yeah.
like who's teaching it. But I love that too, like just being present and then like using that sensory input to sort of be your like object of meditation is really nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Does I know for me, like it's heightened my intuitive senses um to just I don't know, just know, right? Like I took a walk with my dog earlier and she kept pulling me towards this tree that I love. It's this beautiful tree that kind of leans and it looks like it's going to fall any second, but it's so strong. And I always touch its trunk and talk to it. And she kept pulling me. And finally I looked down and there was a perfect heart on its root. And I said, "Oh my gosh." So
Wow.
I took a picture and then I backed way up to take a picture of the whole tree. And I realized its branches are made in a giant heart shape at the top too. And so it's like,
Oh,
oh my God, I'm so drawn to this tree for this reason. So
wow. That's awesome. Yeah.
yeah,
I've found that too. I think it's just a byproduct of connecting, with yourself as you do just get more intuitive and you can kind of follow, your gut and see those little signs here and there.
yeah, yeah, that's beautiful. How are we doing on our time? Oh my gosh, it's already 4:34. So I certainly wanted to give you an opportunity to maybe touch upon anything you wanted to touch upon and we haven't had a chance to, or leave folks with any final thoughts.
You know, the final thought, I guess, that I would leave with everyone, two things. One, if you think you can't meditate, I would like to challenge that idea. Um, I think it's worth giving it a shot. I'll just leave it with that. Give it a shot. If it's not for you, it's not for you, but give it a try. You might surprise yourself. That's the meditation teacher in me. And then just like the human in me, just I just want to leave everyone with try to be a little nicer to yourself today. Try to be a little more patient with yourself today. Treat yourself the way that you would treat a dear loved one. If a loved one were to make a mistake, your kid were to make a mistake, something silly, oh, I dropped this. You're not going to, be so cruel to them and say, "Oh, I can't believe you did that. Why'd you do that? That was so, klutzy of you. Oh, I can't believe it." Right? You're just like, "Oh, let's just clean it up and move on." I challenge you and invite you to treat yourself with a little more patience, a little more kindness, and just a little more grace today and just see how that feels in your heart.
Oh, what a beautiful. Yes, I love that challenge. It's beautiful. And I have to tell you, so before any of my guests come on, sometimes they'll send me their books or, obviously if they have podcasts or if they have YouTube videos. I don't ever do check anything out beforehand because I want to ask engaging questions that I don't know the answers to already, right? And so it's just my own, it keeps my curiosity piqued to learn about folks. So I'm going to go listen to your 8 minute, your podcast because I love guided meditations. And so I'm super excited to go dive in. So thank you.
Oh, cool. Well, you have to tell me what you think after you check it out.
Yeah, totally, totally. All right. Well, it's just been a joy. Thank you so much for being here and in your beautiful work in the world.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And everyone, listen, give Teri a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star rating on Spotify. Teri is so wonderful. She's doing this out of the kindness of her heart. So go send her some love in the reviews, okay?
Oh, and
Okay.
ditto for Kelly and her
Oh.
amazing podcast too. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Well,
you.
again, my heart hugs yours. So, all right. Well, everyone, thanks for joining us today on the Healing Place podcast. And remember, until next time, be gentle with yourself. Thanks. Bye-bye. Hey, everybody. Teri Wellbrock here. Just wanted to thank you again for being a part of this healing space and my hashtag hope for healing journey. Thank you for sharing, liking, inviting others to join, listening in. You've really helped this show blossom. It has now been downloaded in 136 countries and is in the top 2% globally out of 3.2 million shows, which is just amazing. And it's all because of you and your tuning in and inviting others and sharing and liking and loving. And your reviews on Apple really help too. My goal is to hit 100 5-star reviews by the end of the year. And I am closing in on that. So if you are listening in on Apple or Apple Podcasts, please go and rate the show and leave a review if you absolutely love it. And I would be most appreciative. Also, if you would like to receive my monthly Hope for Healing newsletter, please be sure to go to teriwellbrock.com. It's Teri, just one R, WELLBROCK.com. And I have a gift to send you for signing up for that monthly Hope for Healing newsletter. Plus, there are many other resources listed on that page, including a resource library. All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.